desert dust bowl song, where the bill man will call you almost every week.
Today we're going to be changing the alternator on this 2015 Jeep Patriot. It's got the 2.4, not that it makes a difference. It's kind of a pain to do, and I'm going to be in and out because of family stuff, so it might take me a little while, but we'll get her done. First things first, I've got it jacked up on stands. We're going to take this wheel off. You don't have to, but it's going to be a lot easier. One very important step to doing this job that's easy to forget is to disconnect your battery. You only have to disconnect the negative. Just make sure it doesn't move in such a way that it makes contact afterwards. I've already removed the, actually I usually leave it out, the little air intake silencer kind of thing. I just don't really care that much, and I kind of like it when it's louder anyway. Tuck that back there. Alright. Next thing we need to do is get this tray off. So you got two of these push pins on either side, and then underneath you'll need a 10mm socket. There's a few bolts holding it up. I believe there's 6. So once those are off, then this whole thing will drop out of the way. And no, I have never invested in the proper tool for dealing with these, which is why I actually don't have as many to remove, because I've broken some, and they're surprisingly hard to purchase. I think you can only get them at the dealership. And our dealership, I don't know, I messaged them, sent them an email on their parts request thing, said I wanted some. They never got back to me, so I guess they don't want my business. I have to admit, I don't know when that happened. Safe to say you probably use Rock Auto a lot when you can pull your under tray off of your engine and find a Rock Auto magnet in there. Must have fallen out of a box. I don't remember seeing this one. It's one of them Explorer Sport Tracks. It's a bit soggy. With the cover off, we're laying here underneath the engine on the right hand side, and we're going to need to loosen this belt off. The tensioner is this guy up here. It's a 15mm if I recall correctly. No, this one's aftermarket, so that's going to be a 14. Original one should be a 15. And we're going to turn it counterclockwise to take the tension off. If you feel the bolt move, don't worry, because it is a left-hand thread, so you're actually tightening the bolt up as you move it in that direction. And I'm not going to get too carried away with pulling the belt off because of the difficulty with routing it and stuff. I really just want it off of the AC compressor, which is right here. We're going to take this tensioner off, or this idler rather, and we're going to get it off the alternator, which is up there. Alright, now that we're underneath here, you can see here's our AC compressor. There's a mounting bracket here that it's secured to, so it's bolted up right up there. There's another bolt straight up inside this hole here, another one here, and then there's 3 bolts, one up there, and one back up behind here that holds the AC compressor on. And if you look really closely, you can see right above there, there's our alternator. So what we're going to do, we're going to drop the compressor down, but we're not going to disconnect these AC hoses because we do not want to let out all of the refrigerant, because we don't have the means to get that back in. So we're going to let it just hang on these hoses. Also back here, you can see right there, there's a connector. We're going to have to disconnect that just to keep the strain off it. That's about it. for the AC compressor, and then we'll take a look at the alternator itself. So here you can see I've just loosened off the inner fender liner here. Just basically a couple pins under here and just pulled it back. And that enabled me to drop this quite a bit more. So there's our AC compressor. And if we look up in there, there's our idler that's going to have to come off. And then beyond that, there's the alternator. Just a couple bolts, one above and below. Before I can do any of that, we need to disconnect our electrical. So that's our main positive. Looks like a bit of green death there I'm going to want to clean up. And then there's another harness there to get out of the way. Electrical's all disconnected on the other side. I had a really hard time getting the small plug undone. I ended up having to take off this little red locking clip. I had to pull it right off in order to get that thing out. So anyway, that's undone and nothing broke, so it can go back together, thankfully. So I'm going to pull off the idler and then unbolt the alternator, and I'm hoping it'll come out here. Like it sucked. It's because it did. So you might be wondering why I'm going to all this trouble. Is it not charging? Nah, it's charging fine. The issue is that, believe it or not, the Jeep Patriot and its cousins are not Cadillacs or Mercedes-Benzes. I know, shocking, right? What happened was Chrysler was always getting slammed for NVH. That's noise, vibration, harshness. Basically anything that tells you that you're driving a car. Engine noise, engine vibration, these kind of things. So what Chrysler did to reduce it on these Jima engines, and I'm not sure if that spilled over into the Hyundai and Mitsubishi versions as well, but they put a one-way bearing on the alternator pulley. So that if you imagine your alternator's in here and it's spinning away happily, and then you shut off your engine, well, this has got some mass to it and it wants to keep rotating. When the belt stops, because it's no longer being driven by the engine, it judders. So it goes clunk, 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 clunk. And it's so embarrassing when you shut off your engine and the belt goes clunk, clunk a couple of times. And everyone knows that you are not driving an Aston Martin. Ugh. So Chrysler put in a one-way bearing. So basically, as long as the engine is driving the alternator, life is good. But when the engine stops, the alternator can keep spinning inside the pulley. Early ones really had a problem where they were improperly lubricated, and so you could just look down there and basically if you saw grease coming out of this pulley and you had a squeak, you changed everything else, it was this pulley. And traditional mechanic knowledge didn't seem to solve it, because you'd take the belt off and you'd spin everything, and you could spin this alternator till the cows came home and it sounded great. It wouldn't be until you jammed a screwdriver in this thing and pulled the pulley backwards that you'd find that it was rough. And that's that squeak that's happening all the time while you're driving. So we can see here, I've pulled the plastic plug out of the end of this, and you know, it just looks kind of ooey gooey, dry and gross. Now, you can get just a new pulley and it's cheaper, but you got to pull the alternator out to change it. So I'm just going to change the alternator, because this thing's, you know, it's not brand new. So just going to change it out, and that way I know for sure that annoying chirp 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 that's happening all the time should be gone. Because that chirp chirp chirp, as annoying as it is, and it seems like it's just a minor annoyance, that actually means that it's not too long before this is going to fail, and you're going to have you're going to be stuck on the side of the road. And actually, that's the squeak, the all the time squeak. For comparison purposes, this actually feels remarkably different. This is a Delco Remy. It's not, I can't remember if it was a reman or not. Anyway, when I do this, I can actually feel, you'd almost think there was a problem. It feels loose. And that's actually supposed to be that way. I can actually demonstrate really easily. So if I take a, I'm going to put a drill in here in the fan. I cannot turn this pulley in either direction. On this new alternator, you might think I'm crazy for doing this, and maybe I am, but if I put, look at that. The inside of the alternator is not turning, and I can easily, by hand, turn this pulley backwards. But if I go the other way, it locks up. And that's exactly what it's supposed to do. So you can imagine when the engine's driving it, life is good. And then when it stops, the inside of the alternator keeps going. Also, it doesn't go clunk, clunk, clunk. Anyway, I'm sorry to say that there's really not much more to add to this story other than installation is the reverse of removal, and it's just as awful, maybe more so. So I'm going to fight with that, and I'll be back with you when it's time to fire this thing up. Okay, it's over an hour later, and the alternator's in, everything's buttoned up, battery's connected up, belt's on, everything's good. I think there's no parts left underneath, so other than for the covers and stuff. So let's fire it up and see how it sounds. I should have taken a recording of it before, but it was pretty obvious. Like you could hear it pretty loud, that chirping. So I'll know right away if it's not there. .6. Lovely. Lovely. Alright, at this point it's just a matter of putting the under tray back on, putting the fender liner back together, putting the wheel back on, and it's job done. Alright, back on the ground, wheels torqued up. that's done. I guess throughout this ordeal, I kind of made my feelings pretty obvious that this job really did kind of suck. But don't let that dissuade you. Do I think that you should take this to a shop and let them handle it? Nah. It's going to suck for them too, and they're going to charge you accordingly. So if you've got a Patriot caliber compass, probably Chrysler 200, anything like that with that 1.8 2-liter 2.4 engine family, and it's got that chirp, get out there, fix it. In some body styles, it's easier than in these. Pretty happy to have that handled. It's been annoying for a long time and kind of embarrassing to drive around, honestly. I'm beat. I'm heading in. Have a good night, folks. As always, like, share, subscribe. Really appreciate it. Cheers.